And a very good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Sean.
This is Alex.
And you're listening to another episode of Coaster Kings Radio. And today's episode is a continuation of our China journeys. And we're going to be talking about the Giant Buddha of Leshan, Chongqing, and then Happy Valley Chongqing. And if you haven't listened to our previous episodes, we have quite a few China episodes out now. We've got a couple Beijing episodes, Shanghai, the Chengdu parks, which include the Tarong clone. Lots of stuff out there, so make sure to catch up on those as well. But today we're talking about a couple of a cultural site, one of the most fascinating cities in the world, and a really enjoyable Happy Valley theme park, surprisingly. Yes. Mm-hmm. So we'll talk about Leshan first. So we were staying in Chengdu, and one of our activities we wanted to do is we wanted to go to Leshan, which is a city maybe like hour and a half by bullet train outside of, I think it's south of Chengdu. And there they have the Giant Buddha of Leshan, which is the biggest Buddha ever carved out of, I guess, cliff. And it's particularly amazing because it was done in like the year 713 is when they started building it. And in 803, it was completed. So, and that was during the Tang Dynasty. So this is a super old, really impressive Buddha, and it's 233 feet tall, or 71 meters tall, and it's still the largest stone Buddha in the world. Yeah. Which, I mean, like, the recent years they've been building some, like, really modern Buddhas, but, like, historical Buddhas, this is by far the biggest ever created. And this park is also kind of like the birthplace of Buddhism in China.
Yeah. So, to be, like, full disclosure, the reason that we even considered, like, that we even knew about the Great Buddha of Leshan is because of Reflections of China at Epcot. But, in fairness, like, it was a good idea to go. It is absolutely the number one can't miss tourist activity in Western China, I think. I think it's truly one of the great man-made wonders of the world. And in terms of, like, statues and stonework and stuff, it was one of the tallest structures of its kind ever built.
And it's super old.
Despite being incredibly old. It's, like, hard to really fathom the degree of artwork.
I mean, it's 1,200 years old. More than 1,200 years. Like 1,221 years old.
You think of, like, Mount Rushmore, and, you know, I think a lot of people realize that, like, Mount Rushmore is honestly really small in person and kind of underwhelming.
Really recent.
And, frankly, a defacing of an indigenous American monument, but that's another conversation. But it's a lot less remarkable when you think about what Buddhists were doing in Leshan 1,200 years ago.
I think one of the coolest things is when you're at the actual monument, there's actually the tomb of the guy who made it. Like, his entire life work was overseeing and building this giant Buddha. And then he got buried right next to it, which is kind of cool. You can actually walk up to his tomb.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so actually we kind of just went for the Buddha because that is like the most iconic thing to do. But it was actually by far not my favorite thing of the day at all. Because this park is actually home to tens of thousands of Buddhas. Like, I kid you not, the sheer amount of Buddha statues in this park is bewildering. I think we kind of labeled it as like the favorite or coolest thing we've ever done.
Ever.
Because this park is on a mountain, and the mountain is like Mount Ma, if I pronounce it correctly. And it's actually like a giant park of Buddhas. And underneath this mountain is actually a giant cave complex, which is the largest underground temple complex ever created. And it is home to tens of thousands of Buddhas. It's literally called like the Cave of 10,000 Buddhas. But within there is actually the tallest cave Buddha ever built, the tallest cave statue ever created. So they hollowed out the inside of the mountain and chipped away at it and built a 100-foot tall or 33-meter tall giant Buddha, which is really impressive. And then there's another one of those kind of on the edge of the mountain, also carved inside the mountain, and that is called the Pharmacist, which is an equally as impressive Buddha. But that one you can even climb up the mountain on the outside and walk back into the cave and there's like an observation deck. The whole complex is incredibly impressive. I mean, we could walk around there for hours, and it's nice and cold inside because it's like inside a mountain. And oh my god, it was so impressive.
Truly one of the most spectacular works of human art, of art and architecture. I really struggle to fathom anything anywhere in the world that is really quite as remarkable as this, because carving a cave through a mountain and carving statues that are over 100 feet tall from the inside out, to the point where there was something just unremarkable about walking through and realizing that it's not like these are a bunch of statues carved from rocks that they hauled into the cave. It's all one piece. It's all part of the mountain.
Yeah, everything. It's it's already the largest temple complex underground ever built, but it's also the largest man-made caves, man-made carved display of Buddhas in the world. And I was reading that it's like a traditional way of carving them out, and it is one of the only places that even did it like that. And it's so impressive. And I think the coolest thing is we actually didn't realize. So we took a taxi to the park, and then the taxi driver took us all the way around this mountain. And we entered this park. It was gorgeous. Gorgeous. The weather was awesome.
It was like a giant laying Buddha.
And so you have the giant laying Buddha, which is
hundreds of feet.
Yeah, it's 170 meters long. So multiply that by 3, and you got your feet. Mm-hmm. So maybe about 500 feet long, which is really crazy. And then, there was another tunnel of the 18 something Buddhas, and there's all these depictions. And then we finally got to the actual temple complex, which we didn't actually even realize was part of the whole park. And then we climbed the mountain. There's some temples on top of the mountain. And then we kind of made our way across to the other mountain where the actual giant Buddha was. So all in all, it was several hours of experience. And then we came back down, and on the back end of the mountain, which doesn't make a lot of sense, but where we entered this park / Buddhist world, there is actually another really impressive set of classic Buddhas that were carved on the outside of the mountain, and that's where I found the dead bat. Remember? And I was like, I accidentally stumbled upon the dead bat, and it was covered in animals. Ugh, it was gross. But there was a bunch of other there was so many Buddhas all around.
I'm glad that was a distinct memory for you.
Not for you.
And I had forgotten all about it. I probably have a picture in it here. We also saw a cat there.
You said cats everywhere, and old.
But yeah, this basically, I think the Great Buddha of Leshan and the 1,000 Buddha Cave, the 10,000 Buddha Cave, and the surrounding gardens, the adjacent garden of Buddhas that are depicted, each country's depiction of Buddha, lots of Indian Buddhas and just all different kinds of Buddhas. I mean, this was really. I really just struggle to imagine being more blown away by a historical monument than this complex. Consider we had just went to the Great Wall of China, and even the Great Wall of China, I feel is not as breathtaking to me as these Buddhas. Maybe just because, you can only see so much of the Great Wall of China, and I think the biggest, coolest thing about the Great Wall of China is the sheer size of it, and the civil planning of it, the sheer undertaking of the project. But it is not an artistically nuanced project in the same way that these Buddha carvings are. So for me, it's even more astounding and enriching than really anything I've ever seen in my life. So,
I totally agree. And I think one thing is we knew so little about, I guess, Buddhist culture.
I was totally surprised.
And we already did some Buddhist monuments in Beijing, and this wasn't our first Buddhist monument, but I think the sheer amount of education inside the caves, I learned a lot. I learned about the realms and the different lives you go through, and it was honestly quite fascinating, and it wasn't busy at all, which is nice. It wasn't a touristy hotspot. Nobody was trying to sell you anything. It was very calm, relaxing, and people were there because they pilgrimaged there to go see all that, and it was a really cool environment. I think it's one of the coolest things we've ever done. Mostly because of the surprise, I guess. But it was really cool. Yeah. So if you ever go to Chengdu, if you ever find yourself in that neck of the woods,
if you're ever in
definitely gotta add it on.
If you go to Western China,
if you're in Sichuan, you gotta do it.
Simply the greatest.
You gotta do it.
It is truly spectacular.
I think it is. I think my top 3 most spectacular things I've ever seen now is the Giant Buddha of Leshan, followed by the Great Wall, followed by the Summer Palace, and then probably the Forbidden City. It's kind of great. It's all in China because it's so impressive. And
then there's Hongyadong. In Chongqing, which
so we're gonna talk about that next. Yeah. So we took a train back to Chengdu, and then the next morning we took a train from the Chengdu East Station to Chongqing. I think we went to the North Station, and we stayed at the JW Marriott in Chongqing. We got a nice upgrade, which is cute. It's a great location in the city if you ever need to go. It's like walking distance from Hongyadong, which is great because Hongyadong is kind of like the highlight of this really impressive city. But yeah, let me talk a little bit about the city and why we wanted to go so badly. So it was a bucket list city for a very long time, mostly because of the incredible growth of the city. So it is the only Chinese municipality with a population over 30 million, which includes about 7 million of rural population. And it is the largest city in the world currently by area.
By a huge margin.
Yeah, it's massive. And it's one of only 4 directly controlled cities in China. So the government directly controls 4 cities, including Shanghai, Beijing, Tianjin, and then Chongqing. So it is like this kind of mega city in the west of China, as where everything else is on the coast always. And it has kind of to do with moving a lot of the industries from the ports and from the coast inland. Because the labor is cheaper, there was more space. And so the urban population went from 7.5 million people in right before the turn of the millennia, I guess, to 22 plus million in just 25 years. So there's a 300% growth in population. The city is just like exploded in size. And it is also a very fascinating city, which we'll talk a little bit more about Hongyadong in a minute. But the city itself was built on these mountain ridges. Like there's these really steep mountains that come into the Yangtze and the Jialing rivers, and they meet in the middle, which is also where the old city wall is, the ancient city wall, so we visited. But it's a fascinating city because you would think, well, if a city that's sprawling, it's probably on flat land. But no, it's on like staggered mountains, and the farms are like those plateau farms, you know, where like there's little ridges of rice and stuff. It's a highly fascinating place, and taking the train into it, I really enjoyed watching the landscape, and like the train bridges are so immensely tall. It's crazy. I mean, it's kind of dubbed as like the world's like cyberpunk city, and it all makes a lot more sense if we talk a little bit more about all the things that we visited. But I'll let Alex talk a little bit about like Raffle City.
So like our hotel was the perfect location, and like right in the middle of the thick of it all. The first thing we did was actually hop on the metro line. We got checked in, enjoyed the view from our room, and we hopped on line 2 for the metro and took it directly to... What's the name of the metro? Do you have the train station?
Yeah, it's all on the list. It's a Liziba station.
Liziba. I kept calling it lesbian throughout the trip.
Want to zoom into the notes a little more?
No, I can see it. I was just like, I'm going out of...
Spit a lot happening together.
I'm going in order based on like
what we actually
the pictures that I took as memory joggers.
Fair.
So Liziba is a train station inside of a residential and commercial building on the edge of a cliff. And from the looks of it, it's just like this train just pierces right through the center of an otherwise unassuming building.
Yeah, this monorail system.
Oh, yes.
It's iconic.
Yeah.
It's so iconic.
A lot of the metros are monorails because of the dramatic changes in elevation throughout the city. So, in a way, Chongqing kind of just feels like a giant theme park where everything is connected via monorails. and
flashy buildings
the
and
train
walkthroughs.
Station, it was just so cool. It opened in 2005, and it quickly became like a local landmark, and they even had to build like viewing platforms and stuff on street level so that people could watch as the trains entered and exit.
And it's funny because it is such a steep cliff, so when you are watching it, you're actually on these platforms that are hanging over the Yangtze River.
Yeah.
And then, but when you are inside the train station, when you exit on the backside, you're like on the 6th floor or something, and you just walk straight into the street on the backside. But the front side, you have to take 6 escalators down. It's kind of hard to describe, but Chongqing is on such an incredibly steep mountain range that everywhere you go, like you're just either like highly suspended above ground far below you, or like
buried into the
ground. And I think that's kind of what I think Chongqing is also famous for. I'm sure you've seen videos online where like you're like at the top of this building, or you know you're walking on street level. You enter this building and then you just walk a few feet, and then suddenly you're like on top of this building. It's fascinating, the high differentiation.
The elevation changes in a place like San Francisco seem like moderate.
Yeah, very mundane. And it's like the only place in the world where I've been where you really don't quite know where you are, like when it comes to the floors. I mean, we struggled kind of getting out of Raffle City, for example, because it's like half buried in the ground, but that's also like 8 skyscrapers.
You
know where you are.
It's an 8 skyscraper complex.
Connected.
And the shopping mall is in the basement, but because of the topography, part of the mall faces the ocean and it's above ground, and part of it is under a mountain. And
so I guess we can move on to that part next. I think we went
Raffles
there
City
next.
is exactly where we went.
So
after the train station.
where the Jialing and the Yangtze rivers meet is where the old city walls were, and in true modern Chinese fashion, these like 1,000-year-old walls are now being joined by this crazy 8 skyscraper complex that has the world's tallest vertical or horizontal skyscraper that connects 6 of them. It's almost hard to explain what Raffles City is, but I definitely recommend looking at Raffles City Chongqing on Google, and you can kind of see photos. But we went there, and we went to get some snacks, some food, walk around, and we wanted to go to the old city walls, which we did, which were really cool because you have a cool view of the city around. And then I think the coolest thing we did at that complex was the Crystal. I'll have Alex talk about the Crystal.
So the Crystal is a sky bridge that connects the tops of 4 of the adjacent skyscrapers. It is the highest skyscraper connecting bridge that connects any 3 or more skyscrapers. The complex really has to be seen to be believed. I recommend right now, whatever you're doing, as long as you're not driving, you should Google Raffles City, Chongqing, just to get a look at it. It kind of looks like boat sails. The wind, like the way that it blows and the way that it's all situated on this point facing the rivers, it all looks like it's being bent, and like it all bows in the middle as if being like wind-blown sails. Just a beautiful, really
the depiction
gorgeous.
It's so art.
And then like the mast of this sail complex that we are imagining is this giant crystal walkway called the Crystal. There's restaurants and a health club and the lobby and restaurant area for the Intercontinental Hotel. And there is like a touristy section of it on one edge that you can access directly from the shopping mall called the Skywalk. And the Skywalk is an 800-foot glass floor observation deck. And like we've done glass floor observation decks before, but this one was like truly terrifying because the glass was really clean and clear.
You had to wear these little these little
booties
around,
like little disposable shoe booties to keep it all clean and keep it from getting scuffed up.
But 800 feet is tall,
and the panes.
I mean,
I've seen other glass floor observation decks where like the infrastructure keeping the panes of glass up felt like a lot sturdier and a lot more like beefier. And this, like, walking over it, I felt like I was just walking on a window that was turned on its side, and it scared me. Like, my fight or flight kicked in so bad, I thought I was going to throw up.
I will say this really was the most terrifying one we've ever done, because I've done one in Chicago with the one at the Pearl Tower, and I'll be that person that rolling around on the glass floor, like, face down, like, having such a great time, fake skydiving. Like, I don't really usually get scared by these things. But then this one... So, first of all, it's 800 feet up, which I think in my head, like, wow, that's like 2 Supermen escape from Krypton's at Magic Bound. But, like, that's very tall. Like, that is kind of really tall. And then you are also suspended above the Yangtze, which is kind of, dug down. Like, Raffles City is elevated above Yangtze River. So then you see all those, like, giant cruise ships, and they're dwarfed below you. And it's like, it is unreal how much taller and kind of scarier this one is than any of the other ones I've ever done. It was bright outside. I don't know. Yeah, it was very exposed because it sticks out of Raffles City. So it's like it's not like you are part of a building, or it's not like you are kind of surrounded by the building that you're in. Like, you're really sticking out. Like, it's really just you in mid-air. It's open air, so it's air blowing through. I don't know. It was definitely like scarier than the ones you've done before.
This experience extracted a carnal, like, primitive survival instinct in me. I felt like my brain wasn't even part of the process. It was all, like physical, like, almost just, like, my muscles and my nervous system took over and were like, let's get you out of here. like, I even surprised myself. Like, I'm afraid of heights, and, like, glass floor observation decks are always something that freaked me out, but this was on a completely different dimension of fear for me, the likes of which I don't think I've ever really experienced to this exponent. So that was a really memorable experience, even though I was a total fraidy cat about it. We were in Raffles City. Raffles City. Is kind of like the home base for a lot of different activities around Chongqing, because in addition to like the skyscrapers and the mall itself, its proximity to the fortifications, to the ferries, to the cable car, which is a famous activity that we did, and then also its proximity to Hongyadong, the cliff city. It's all just kind of right there. So we found ourselves passing through Raffles City a couple of times, and because there's so much food there, like it was an easy and like it was like a comfortable and easy food experience liaison, but like still culturally like simpatico, like still enjoying local food options. The Sichuan like spicy peppers and stuff that like have like numbing agents that actually make like your mouth kind of useless as you eat it. Like that's not really our gig.
Yeah, we tried it in Chengdu, but I wasn't a big fan.
Yeah, Sean kind of freaked out.
Well, I didn't freak out. It was just kind of like, all right. So I've had these peppers before in hot pot here when we tried hot pot here, and so like I'm not new to the concept. But then I ate this noodle bowl in Chengdu, and I was very excited for this. And then I was also very excited to drink my little jasmine tea with it. But then like it's so numbing to the taste buds that it doesn't even hurt like spicy food usually does. Like it's not hot. It's almost like a cooling. Like, it's so spicy, it's cooling, like, it's just numbing. So, like, I wasn't like my mouth was burning, but your taste buds are pretty much, like, deactivated. So I'm drinking this jasmine tea that I love, and I'm like, wow, it tastes like water. Like, I can't taste anything. So then, like, everything I did was, like, it tasted, like, the same. For like, even when I had, like, a little chocolate, I was like, God, everything just tastes like nothing. And I wasn't really a big fan of that, because, like, I don't know, like, I'd rather taste something than nothing.
That's fair.
So I don't know. I mean, it was fine. Like, you know, it did the Sichuan pepper thing, and I don't think it's as crazy as some other peppers you could eat because it doesn't feel as hot. Like I've had it before, like I said before, I did it as a hot pot before, and like it's fine, but it was not like I really got my way to eat it. I guess. Yeah, that makes sense.
So after our initial pass through of Raffles City, we did the Chongqing Tianjiang Cableway, which is a large 2-vehicle cable shuttle. That opened in 1987. It was the first ever aerial corridor over the Yangtze River. And at the time when it opened, it was like a major commerce and commuting like function. Like it was very utilitarian in its concept and in its execution. But then as the city grew up and as the train tunnels and vehicle tunnels and bridges helped connect the different parts of the city to the central city, the cable car became less about utilitarian purposes and more as a tourist attraction. And I think as a tourist attraction, it works really well. It's just really fun that something like that exists, seemingly just for the sake of it. With all the like monorails and like cable cars and stuff, something about this place just feels very futuristic in like a wistful sort of Disneyland idea of the future, where it's all about like sky rides and people movers and monorails. So the cable car attraction just adds to that. It was really fun to do something like this, and it wasn't very expensive. It wasn't that time consuming. We had heard horror stories about like 1-2 hour waits for the cable car. We only waited like 25-30 minutes. And in the interest of time conservation, we only did it one way and then took the metro back. And the whole experience, taking the cable car over and then our walk to the metro car on that side of Chongqing was fascinating. Lots of like shopping and hotels and personal residences and businesses all kind of like staggered on various staircases and alleyways and such. Very like quintessentially Chongqing in the sense that it was like this labyrinth of commerce and individual dwellings and like boardwalks of sorts with like random staircases everywhere and stuff. From there, we took our train back. What else did we do? Did we go? I think we went back to Raffles City by that point to get some food in before our river cruise.
Oh, that was so fun.
The river cruise was awesome.
So the hotel front desk told us like, hey, We should do this cruise because one thing I do like about staying at like JWs and stuff, and I think I realized this first in Beijing, is like we historically never really were big concierge people. I don't think I've ever really used concierge, but then it's kind of nice in some Chinese cities to kind of have like an extra eye, or if your Alipay doesn't work or you can't access whatever website to book a ticket for a cruise, like they'll just do it for you. So that is one of the things I like about having concierge, or like getting set up with a private chauffeur for the Great Wall, stuff like that. So in this case, what we did is we got a boat tour organized from the docks behind Raffles City, right by the old ancient city walls, and it's kind of all under construction, so we weren't even sure how to get there. So we kind of did like a dry run before dinner, and then we went down to our boat, and we were told like, okay, like you want to take the one that leaves at what was like 7:30 or 8 because you want it to be dark. And so we're like, all right, we'll wait. And so we didn't realize that the boat had been boarding the entire time for our cruise. We were just kind of sitting there waiting, and people were just going by. We're like, oh, we'll take the next boat. It was actually our boat, so we learned that the hard way. But we show up to the boat, and then we get upstairs, and all the seating is gone. We go downstairs, and all the seating is gone. We're like, oh, no. And this is kind of like it's a kind of a touristy boat trip. We were the only people that weren't Chinese for sure. Everything was in Mandarin, and then they were like selling fruit bowls and snacks and drinks, and then there was like this whole show program. It's like an hour and a half cruise, I think, on the river, and then the cruise like had all these shows, like a traditional Chinese mask disappearing show, whatever. There was a magic show. There was a lot going on, and then we turned around. And then we went downstream of the Yangtze, which is a lot quicker. And then we went around Raffles City, and then we went on the Hongyadong side, which is the cooler side, I think, because it was like there's a ton of skyscrapers that are all orchestrated, choreographed with lights together at the same time, and then you get this really cool view of Hongyadong. So, all things considered, it was a very, very enjoyable boat cruise, and we had some snacks, and we took a lot of videos and photos. And then when we got back to Raffles City, we had to climb up the mountain to Raffles City. And then we went through Raffles, and we couldn't find the exit. And this poor staff member is like, where are you trying to go?
We're trying to get to Hongyadong.
And we're like trying to get to Hongyadong.
Because now that it's nighttime, like Hongyadong is the center of Chongqing. It's really the center of Chongqing regardless, but especially at night. Hongyadong is a glowing golden Chinese monument to restaurant, dining, commerce, history, living. It's a cliffside village built using the original wall fortifications for the city of Chongqing. Holes and cavities in the walls that were beveled out hundreds and hundreds of years ago.
So I took some historic notes in our show notes. I will be presenting those.
Oh, good.
So this is a very historical part of Chongqing. I mean, this is kind of like the OG Chongqing, and it dates back to 1046 BC. So, like, we're talking very, very old.
Years ago.
That's like before old China, like Imperial China. It was like the boss state,
literally
way back when.
Thousands of years ago.
And so, this is actually a cave. So, Hongyadong is actually a cave. It stands for, like, you know, the cave of the cliffs. And so, Hongyadong is a cave system first. Not very big, but like used to be the old fortress fortification for that old boss state, again, 1046 BC. And then it was used as a fortress through the end of the Qing dynasty. This is also when they had the old city walls and stuff. And then in the 14th century, during the early Ming dynasties, when the stilt houses started being built there. So the caves are all underneath it, and then they built these stilt houses, like Alex said. And they lined the whole cliffs, and they were mainly used for defense. For defense, but also for all the ships, for like trading. So like the people were working, and then the ships would line up along the Yangtze River, because the stilt houses weren't super defensible. Like they weren't like fortifications out of rock, like the city walls were or the caves were. They were just kind of more used for storage, living, all that kind of stuff. And now these old buildings, they were actually occupied by working class until the 90s. But since Chongqing has been exploding in population, and it really was a focus for China to become like a big industrial city, they have since been renovated and been kind of made like public. So now there's like commerce, restaurants, and it's turned into this crazy tourist attraction. It's lit up with lights. I mean, I will say it's a very Chinese tourist attraction. I feel like I literally saw like one Russian person there, and the rest is all Chinese. You know, it's true. Remember we were taking that bridge over there, like this giant walkway over the Yangtze to get there?
People kept asking if we were from Russia.
Yeah.
I guess we just looked the part.
Maybe those are the only white tourists left.
Not taking offense.
Over there right now.
Choose not to be offended.
But yeah, so, and now it's kind of described as like the cyberpunk capital of the world. Like, it is so cyberpunky. Like, it'll be smoggy and dark at night. You're climbing through these rocks, and then there's like these stilt houses on all sides of the rocks, and there's neon, and it is like a different world. It's hard to explain.
I called it the vertical Vegas. It feels like maybe like imagine Fremont Street, but thousands of years ago, and Chinese, all glimmering and golden and flashy, and the way that the walkways, the staircases, are like interwoven with little cave staircases that are literally thousands of years old. The shopping, like the modern stuff, obviously is newer. Most of that stuff is only about like 20 to 50 years old. But also just like the coolest places to eat and shop in the whole city, which is saying a lot. But like the staircase, some of the points of access where like you're literally going through these caves that were carved thousands of years ago, all just so seamlessly integrated. I just was just so blown away by this, and I just thought it was just one of the coolest things I've ever seen. And like a lot of things on these China trips that we've taken this year, it's like just kind of hard to fathom it. Like it makes other allegedly impressive things, especially like in the United States, allegedly old monuments and stuff from like a couple hundred years ago. It just makes it all seem so ordinary because the Chinese will very matter-of-factly like weave a shopping mall into thousands of year old cave fortifications and make it look so beautiful and thrilling and aesthetically satisfying. This was one of the only things that we did on the trip where we had to do it twice. Because like after our Happy Valley day, like we did our Happy Valley. We slept because we were exhausted. Slept in, did Happy Valley, and then we went back and did this adjacent boardwalk that's also hanging off of the fortification. Offers really fabulous views of Hongyadong from like eye level. You can get great views of it from street level of it like kind of hanging above you. But then the boardwalks adjacent to it were built to help like mitigate the crowding because it's such a popular attraction that like it's just shoulder to shoulder people going to the Hongyadong. It's like being in a nightclub practically because it's just swaths.
But it was so busy. It was almost, I didn't love that part because it was almost like suffocatingly busy. So yeah. I mean, Hongyadong is not big. Hongyadong is very, very small compared to any big major tourist attraction in the world because it's so old and it's like built inside cliffs. So to get up to the street level above Hongyadong, we had to really climb through like these. We actually did go through the caves. Yeah. Where all the the little prayer things are hanging and stuff, and but it was honestly kind of chaotic trying to go around there, and I didn't enjoy it. I didn't mind it as much when we're actually climbing through the buildings and like the caves and the stairs and the rocks and stuff. Because that was really cool. But watching it from a distance across the street, where all the tourists were on the bridge side, it was so loud. People were screaming. It was too much. Like we're theme park people. We're in the crowds all the time. I don't really get overwhelmed like that, but I was kind of getting overwhelmed a little bit. It was a lot. I was like, all right, it's time to bounce. Let's go into the thing and then climb up. But it was really cool. And then the next day, we actually went back at night. So we went to Happy Valley, which we'll talk about in a second. But then we went back at night because this was like, Hongyadong is like the thing you come for. Yeah. I mean, Chongqing is...
It was so good.
Spectacle.
Because like, the first night we didn't do the boardwalk, like the adjacent boardwalks that are hanging on the rest of the old
right, so like I kind of call it like the treehouse. We went back to second night because it was just easy walking distance from the hotel, which is really pleasant. And then we went to, and it's kind of hidden, and I forgot the exact name. Is it Daozhang or something? Dongjuan. It has some sort of name.
Oh, the boardwalks.
Yeah, and it's actually just like it built into the old walkways of the still buildings.
They're like brand new.
Yeah, so you can walk down these stairs, and it's kind of like a giant Tarzan's treehouse.
Yes.
Like. But then you walk all around the cliff sides, and it's kind of historical and explains, where they used to have these like old cliffs, and you can still see the holes in the rock. Really cool, and it wasn't that busy. Yeah. You have an amazing view of all the skyscrapers and their light shows, and the bridge that interacts with the train as it runs over it. I mean, again, it's cyberpunk dream. It's like a video game in there. And then, but you just kind of walk around, and you got good exercise, climbing some stairs, and looking at Hongyadong from the side, and it was very, very pleasant. It was very cool. And I think that was my favorite thing in all of Chongqing. I mean, I could go for a walk there every night. It really wasn't that busy there. It was really pleasant, despite being right there in the action.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to find.
It was it was surreal. I remember thinking, like, it was such serendipity to be there and experience it. I remember thinking, like, am I ever going to feel this excited about anything ever again? Or is this it? Like, is this the coolest thing that will have ever existed in my life? And, like, everything else will be a disappointment. I guess we'll see.
So then, the next day, we took, was it line 2 to line 4? Towards the World Expo, towards Happy Valley Chongqing.
Yes.
So we went to Happy Valley Chongqing, which I guess I'll start for a little bit. Beautiful park. So this is actually part of an OCT project, because all Happy Valleys are OCT.
And this one's actually in a valley.
An OCT stands for Overseas
Chinese
Town, which this is just like a low concept town. So in order to get there, you get off on the metro, and then you walk into like neighborhood / complex with like shopping and facilities and all these, typical cloned apartment buildings, all look the exact same. And then you cross this tunnel, and then you get to Happy Valley. It's a typical modern concept place. I mean, I feel like almost every neighborhood in China is like that, except for this part included an actual theme park. And the theme park, like Alex said, is actually in the valley. So you start on top, and you work your way all the way down. And, I mean, it was way more valley-ish than I realized. Like, you walk in, you take like an escalator, or like you take some stairs down, and you have kind of like this platform where you can view the park. And this giant wind coaster is way below us. I mean, this park really is like in the valley. And then you take all these escalators down, and then every platform has more rides, and you just keep working your way down the valley. I thought it was a really cool park. Very pretty, nicely landscaped. The cool thing was, because of its mountainous environment, all the rides were kind of like built on mountains. And we have some photos out there, and at this point when this podcast comes out, we should be having some photos out there from the wind coaster too, which is really located like on a mountainside. So when you look at it from one point, you see the city in the background. It's really quite impressive. But yeah, let's talk a little bit about the rides collection. I'm going to go in order that I have prepared, and we'll start with Jerome's wooden coaster, which
Jerome.
Alex has been the rider of that one.
The kiddie area. So this Happy Valley, it wasn't as big as some of the other ones we've been to, and it had like 3 or 4 themed areas, and definitely one of like the later design of the Happy Valleys, where despite its smaller size, it's a lot more concise, and there's a lot more attractions like per square foot. And so there was this huge wing of the park that had been retconned into some sort of like kids' airplane intellectual property of some kind. But there was a wooden coaster in this area, so like even though it's like a bunch of anthropomorphic aircraft and like transformers and shit, has this wooden coaster there. So that's called Jerome's wooden coaster, or Jerome's flying dragon, or so, I don't know. This is a GCI. It was a great layout. The terrain aspect of this ride was awesome. A little chattery in places, maybe not as like well maintained as it possibly could be, but I don't think it would have been as much of an issue if the lap bar didn't require 3 clicks, which is a lot for someone of my size. So any sort of like wooden coaster shuffliness that would have normally been pleasant because my lap bar was not stapled, it was exasperated. Like the stapling made every jolt and bump on the coaster feel kind of uncomfortable. And there was some great airtime too, but again, it was like it was hard on the body. It was hard on like my abdomen because of how many clicks were necessary to dispatch the train. But a really cool layout, a cool coaster. Definitely like the kind of track layout you want from a park that is like resting on cliffs and hilltops and such. Was it like the best GCI ever? No. It's probably not even our favorite GCI. Like, it's definitely not my favorite GCI in China, because Wood Coaster in Shenzhen definitely wins that remark. But, ever since the Shenzhen Happy Valley bullet coaster incident, parks have just really ratcheted down, no pun intended, on like, safety functions and stuff. Everything from dispatch thresholds to, like, height and weight ceilings, and like, there's no guarantees that we would even go back and ride the wood coaster in Shenzhen and even be able to have rides that were as good as we had before, because for all we know, they could be doing 3 clicks on that one too. And then, like, even if you can get it dispatched somewhat comfortably, once the ride starts going, once you're rocking and rolling and bouncing around, like, it really does start to feel like kind of unpleasant and you yearn for like a Western GCI experience of a similar caliber, like any of the like European or American GCIs by comparison, but a cool roller coaster nonetheless, and then like a neat ride for their roster of rides. They don't have a ton of coasters. As far as Happy Valley parks go, this one was definitely kind of on the lighter edge of coasters. They had their wooden coaster, their mine train, their kiddie coaster, and their major thrill coaster, the wing coaster. You've got the wing coasters third on your list.
Yeah, so next I want to talk about Monte Carlo track.
Oh, it's fourth. Okay, wait. Which Monte Carlo track is the mine train, right?
Yeah, mine train. Which is
no idea.
It was kind of themed first. I guess they were going to theme it because the station is kind of like themed to, I guess, Monte Carlo, but then the rest are themed to a mine. It's very
like
Chinese,
Italian, but it's West. And and then like there's other Happy Valleys that have Monte Carlo themed stuff, but it's the race car. So like I don't know, but yeah, this is another one of the many standard mine train with Vekoma 2 lift hill mine train layouts. This was a Jinma 1, so it didn't have the helix right at the end, but otherwise pretty much identical. This was identical to the one that we rode at Chengdu Sunac Land. But these are great rides. They're always enjoyable. I love that even though this is an off-the-shelf coaster, the way that it's nestled on the hillside, you like are on top of the ride when you enter the park and like scale down the mountain on these very like Universal Studios Hollywood-esque escalators to access the majority of the park. And the coaster, the mine train, is kind of nestled in right there. So you get like a bird's eye view of this coaster and like an eye level view. But then when you enter the coaster, you're underneath the coaster. Like you're at the basement level where the queue is, and then you go upstairs into the station. Again, by this point in our Chongqing expedition, this was like exactly what you hope for and expect for a Chongqing experience, where things are at the same time like below you and above you simultaneously. But yeah, aside from that, same basic experience, good coaster regardless. And then in the back of the park, they had sort of like a turn of the century sort of themed area. And they had like a flying theater that was closed, but it was themed to like the golden era of aviation. And there was like a model airplane, like a Victorian era like model aircraft out front representing the attraction.
If I'm not mistaken, it was actually called like Flying Over Chongqing or Flying Over Sichuan. Like it was actually regionally themed, which is fun because usually I'm used to that being a Sunac park thing, but this park had it. Which is funny because in a way, this park kind of had Sunac vibes.
Yeah. Newer Happy Valley parks definitely mine the Sunac territory.
Yeah, I mean, a little bit lower quality in Sunac, I will say that.
For sure.
I felt the same way, and we'll talk about that in a different episode about Nanjing Happy Valley. Also, like a new era Happy Valley.
Mm-hmm.
The back of the park with the family coaster was quite cute. The family boomerang.
That was a cute coaster. This layout is the same as the Ben 10 coaster at Drayton Manor, or whatever it's called now. So this is like a first-generation Vekoma family boomerang coaster. Great ride. I didn't even know if they would let us ride it, because like as we would find out later, like a different Vekoma family boomerang at Happy Valley Nanjing we were actually considered too tall and too fat to ride that
like
one.
Way too fat.
Even though it's the same product line. So we were lucky. We were happy to get on this one.
And I will say this park, I will say, if you listen to our previous episode, we got bombarded by kids at Sunac and Chengdu. And this was one of those rides, like the entire queue, we were like being bombarded, like videos, photos. I mean, teachers pulling us aside to take photos. But the ride itself was kind of fun because it's like I would say, it's like the Ben 10 layout. But because it's so highly elevated, it's like on this.
It's on this
like crazy superstructure of concrete,
of course.
And it was a strangely thrilling ride because you're really high up. Like it was weird being like kind of confined to those small trains and then going up, going around the track, but then being really really high up and like seeing all the bridges and the cities in the distance. So that was kind of cool. And then last but not least from the coaster collection is the flying wing coaster. Which in the typical Sichuan, Chongqing fast fashion, they had the high check mean. It was a whole thing. But they let me on.
This was one of the less stressful high check experiences.
Mostly because I explained to them, like, hey, I rode all the coasters with the same high check in the other Happy Valley. in Chengdu, and with my shoes, I'm good.
Yeah.
And they were like, oh, okay, we get it, and they let us ride. So it wasn't super crazy, but for me, it was
a lot less stressed about
still
the situation.
A little bit more of a stressful situation.
And there were also other tall people in Chongqing, like. There were people visiting from other regions.
Yeah, we saw like some Indians and stuff.
Yeah, there were people from like South Asia that were definitely above 6 feet. It didn't feel like we were. Being at Chengdu Sunak was crazy because not only were we taller than the average adult, but 99% of the people in the park that day were children.
Yeah, so it was like sore thumbs, but
just
brightly colored
really
shirts.
Exacerbated the problem.
But yeah, it was. It was a great wind coaster. We have been looking forward to this wind coaster, honestly, for years, because we had looked it up when it was being built, and then when the first POV came out, and it was just a cool layout. So you go up to your lift. It's a pretty tall, big ride. Like, it is one of the big boys.
It's like a gatekeeper size.
Yeah, like Gatekeeper, Parrot Coast. Like, it's a big boy B&M. It's themed to dinosaur, like a flying dinosaur. And so you have your lift hill, and you have your half loop,
your dive
loop drop, followed by a giant airtime hill. Really beautiful. Scenic. Oh my god, beautiful.
Camelback.
And then that's followed by a vertical loop, solid vertical loop, followed by another airtime hill, but like a speed hill, like a speed bump. And then you go into this elevated corkscrew that then exits into a drop. And then that drop is followed by a
sharp left turn.
And then you have a 0G roll, which is then followed by a turnaround, and then a flat inverting flip, whatever you call it,
slow,
like an inline slow roll.
Yeah,
and then followed by like a bit of a dip, and then like a
right turn,
and then an incline into the brakes. And it is a mountainside coaster. I don't think I realized how terrainy it is, which is why. And I was going to mention this later, but I can mention it now. We went to Nanjing Happy Valley, and they have a very similar layout coaster, and from a distance. They were like the same layout and the same coaster. And it wasn't until we got to Nanjing we're like, oh, these are completely different. Like the dive loop is a different direction. Like the Nanjing version is the version that you build on a flat piece of land in a smaller part.
Tighter,
it's like it's like a small version of it.
Yeah.
But then this is like the big boy. I have a hard time even giving an example of other coasters where like, oh, like this is the exact same ride but smaller. This is maybe
Big Thunder Mountain at Magic Kingdom versus Big Thunder Mountain at Disneyland.
Yeah, in Anaheim.
Except that Flying Wing Coaster in Chongqing is way better.
Yeah, but I'm trying to think of like a ride
than Big Thunder Mountain. Because like the Disneyland Big Thunder Mountain is like 25% smaller than all of the other ones, right?
Yeah.
Like the whole scope of it, the shaping of it and everything, even though it's the same basic layout.
I guess in a way I'm kind of thinking, you have like Pyrenees, the B&M invert, and it kind of has like a Batman kind of like beginning.
Like a giant Batman.
But then, Batman's clones themselves are so much smaller. I don't know, it's kind of hard to describe. But anyway, that's kind of the vibe you have on this ride. And it was actually a really massive ride, and we have some cool pictures of it because of the terrain. I really, really liked this coaster. I mean, the lines were so long, and we didn't want to battle the crowds even more because we had to wait maybe an hour, maybe 4 or 5 minutes to ride it.
Yeah.
And it was, and then the switchbacks got fuller and fuller.
Being at the park was just also really exhausting because of the kids.
I mean, yeah, it was exhausting. It was very exhausting.
Much, it wasn't just school kids. There was, lots of adults, too. But the kids at this park were even more bold than the ones in Chengdu.
It was we were being photographed the entire time.
It was it took
we were
us
pulling
all
aside
day.
for selfies. We couldn't walk 2 steps without being a group of kids being there.
Yeah.
And then they all wanted a group photo. Then they all want individual photos. And then the chaperones would be like, oh, here's another group. Do you mind taking a photo? So at this point, we were just being casted and walked around like a fucking walk-around character.
We didn't want to,
and don't want to be rude and be like, no. But it was never ending. And
we were literally...
Thousands of kids.
And then, hundreds of pictures.
Then you don't want to, you're waiting to take a photo. I have the camera with me, and I'm trying to take photos of these rides that dispatch every 5 to 10 minutes. It's still a Chinese theme park. Not like they dispatch great. And then I'm standing there waiting for the freaking wind coaster dispatch and to get it in a vertical loop or something. And then this crowd of kids comes up, and this teacher's like, oh, take photos. And then, I'm missing the trains. I'm not getting my shots. I'm just kind of getting annoyed. It's really cute and really endearing, like I said before. But when you get to the sheer amount of kids that we were forced to take photos with, and they all want to practice their English, there's thousands of kids. Thousands of kids. You couldn't walk 2 steps without being pulled aside. When we were doing the K coaster,
they were waiting for us at
the exit. They would ride, they would wait.
Waiting to intercept us.
Oh my god.
Like,
I mean, it was cool, but like, oh my god,
the exit.
Oh my god, yeah. It was to the point where like it was exhausting. It was very exhausting. I think I got, and I was enjoying it in Chengdu Sunak, but at this point I was not really enjoying it much anymore. I was like, oh my god.
At
like,
this point, it was
give me 5 seconds to myself, please.
At this point, I started to feel like nobody there had any respect or concern for our personal space or our privacy or anything. And it just got to the point where I'm like, I'm not an attraction. Like, I'm not a costume character. Like, I'm a human being. Like, have a little more, like, almost like they were treating us like we weren't people. We were, like, an attraction.
Yeah, like a wild
and
animal.
And it's, like, very flattering.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, I also felt like maybe I wasn't even being looked at as, like, a person in their eyes. I was being looked at like some kind of monument. Some sort of establishment that was like, had no feelings and was infinite and wasn't there for any other reason other than to entertain. And I'm like, no, I'm here to have fun with my husband. Like, we're on vacation. Like, we're trying to enjoy ourselves. Like, we didn't come here to be famous. Like, we just came here to ride some rides and leave. So...
And again, like, it was very endearing, and I completely understand it. I mean, we're in the outskirts of Chongqing, and these kids are all the age that they probably were born right before COVID, and they haven't, perhaps never seen, especially not two matching shirt, over 6 foot tall, like,
some of them
big
asked
guys
us,
that were like,
are we colleagues? Are we brothers? I'm like, we're married.
Yeah.
This is my husband. And a lot of them were, like, amazed by that.
It was a lot, like, I get that, and then for that reason, I don't feel, like, I'm not mad at anyone.
Yeah.
And I still find it very endearing, and I find it, like, almost honorable that, like, they were so excited to see us, and, like, we have all these adults that do speak English, like, oh, you guys are cute, like, like, it was no negative vibes whatsoever, but I'm gonna say, like, it was just very overwhelming, to the point where, like, I couldn't take a photo. I could not use my own camera to take a photo.
It was exhausting.
I couldn't move 2 steps without another school group stopping me and the chaperone telling me to take photos. And it just got to the point where, like, I was just very overwhelmed by it.
It was like,
exhausted.
It felt encumbered. Like, it was an encumbering, like...
I went from being cute to being, like, I really cannot do anything. I cannot even ride a ride. Yeah. Like, I cannot stand in line for anything.
I can't go to a
vending
machine.
Anything.
I can't buy a food without...
Can't go to the restroom without them following me. Like, literally. It was pretty extreme. Like, it was extreme. Again, no negative vibes though, but it was just a lot. I was overwhelmed.
It definitely changed how the day went, because I think we would have probably ridden more rides and spent more time in the park if my battery wasn't just completely drained after one lap around the park.
Because at one point you were riding Jerome's wooden coaster and I wasn't allowed on, so I did a lap and took some photos, which is kind of overwhelming, and then I came back and your line was like pretty long, like an hour. So I made all the way around and all the way to the top of the park, and I was just trying to kind of get some good angles from a distance.
So by the time I was done, Sean's like, okay, let's go.
We gotta go. Because then at one point I became the English teacher on the top of the hill, and I was over here educating the kids.
We need to leave. I'm running out of patience.
Sharing my name and where I'm from, and then practicing their English, and it was really cute. But it was like, oh my god, like I have zero energy left because it was dragged forcefully out of me that day. Like
even in line for the coaster, like. Being in line for these rides, you're like a captive.
You're captive.
And, like, at least I made friends with, like, this guy and his girlfriend standing in line for the wooden coaster who were, like, respectful. They had lots of questions and they wanted to chat, but it was, like, it wasn't super crazy like it was with the little kids. And then at one point, the guy, we were using Google Translate to talk, and he asked me, he's like, do you like Chinese girls? And I was like, so here's the thing. That was my husband that you saw earlier. And they were both just like, wow. But,
again, all good vibes. And the park was really pretty. It was a very pretty park.
All good vibes.
Had this river running through. And they had a really impressive ride collection. They were all open, which is really nice.
Everything was open.
Like Frisbee, Ferris wheel, drop towers, tons of flat rides. They had a major rapids ride, a big shoot-to-shoot running multiple trains, steam to a mine. Like, I really enjoyed the park a lot. I think I would enjoy it a little bit more if it wasn't during, like, spring school trip window. Just mostly so I could enjoy walking around more and seeing more without being constantly occupied with selfies and photos and saying hello to kids and asking, saying what my name is and stuff. But again, overall, all good vibes, like positive vibes, just very overwhelming. I don't want to be negative about that at all. So yeah, that is kind of our visit to Chongqing. We went to Hongyadong like we already described. And our next episode, we are flying to Nanjing, which is the the south capital of ancient China. And we did a lot of cool things there, including the old city wall and the Ming Museum and a couple of theme parks. So we're going to be talking about that in the next episode. And we look forward to seeing you there. Make sure you check out our photos that we've posted about this on our social media, Facebook, Instagram. Check out our last couple episodes. We got a couple more Chinese episodes coming up. But we thank you for listening. And wherever you're listening, please leave us a 5-star review. Whether that be Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, wherever you're listening. And we will catch you on the next episode.
Bye.
Bye.